Welcome to this UpGoWise Masterclass Explainer. Today, we're diving into The Drunkard's Walk by Leonard Mlodinow. I'm honestly so thrilled to take you through this because we're taking a really sharp clinical look at judgment under fog. The Drunkard's Walk is basically a foundational practice that cuts right under your baseline confidence. It takes that smooth, readable surface of success, or failure for that matter, and shows you the raw, completely random grain underneath it. Self-mastery without probabilistic humility? It's just self-deception. If we don't understand the forces we literally can't control, we just end up taking credit for the wind and blaming ourselves for the rain. So we're going to build a completely new architecture for how you view outcomes, stripping away the ego and replacing it with clean, statistical clarity. Right off the bat, I want to ask you a question. What if your best story is really just weather? You see, the real wound inside the drunkard's walk isn't some nihilistic idea that life is meaningless or that choice is fake. No, it's way sharper than that. It's the stark realization that you might be navigating your entire life using maps drawn entirely after the storm has already passed. We do this all the time, right? We mistake observed outcomes for destiny. We look at a CEO on a magazine cover or a successful project we managed, and we think we're seeing the definitive blueprint of the universe. But honestly, a lot of times, we're just looking at the weather. Think about it. You meet a winner, your chest tightens up, and you instantly start building a reason. She must be brilliant. He must be lazy. You call it pattern recognition, but really, the brain is just compressing noise into a story so your pride can steer. The human mind absolutely hates loose ends, so it gives you the immense emotional relief of a clean story, even when the data simply cannot support it. Leonard Mlodinow uses this perfect example of former Paramount Pictures CEO Sherry Lansing. She presided over unprecedented back-to-back mega hits like Forrest Gump and Titanic. People hailed her as an untouchable genius who could perfectly predict public taste. But then, when a string of inevitable flops followed, suddenly the industry whispers that she's lost her magic touch. But here's the thing, her meticulous evaluation process hadn't changed one bit. The underlying variance of box office returns had just finally caught up with her. The noise simply shifted. And this brilliantly illustrates the core divide we're looking at here. One paradigm says that results reveal your worth. It gives us heroes and villains. The other? It says results are a mix of skill, noise, timing, and sample size. Outcome worship desperately wants certainty. But probabilistic mastery, well, it wants calibration. It asks for base rates, it asks for ranges, and it makes your jaw finally unclench. Because when you stop demanding that every single result reflects your fundamental worth as a human being, you finally give yourself the space to actually observe reality. Without this, you're just caught in directionless motion. You change strategy after one bad week. You crown a method after one good month. You blindly trust the loud sample, and you punish the quiet truth. Motion without a structured architecture just turns chance into a false spinning compass. Just look at professional sports. You see executives firing brilliant coaches after a 5-game losing streak, even when all the underlying metrics show they're playing the game perfectly. It's the hot hand fallacy. It convinces us a shooter is on fire when statistically they're just experiencing a completely normal cluster of probability. That is the pain of directionless motion. You aren't empty, you're just being overguided by the very last outcome. So in probabilistic thinking, the question completely shifts away from that emotional relief to something colder and honestly much more exact. Don't ask what happened, instead ask what distribution produced this. Now I know, that question feels way less dramatic, less theatrical. It takes the spotlight right off your ego. But trust me, this probabilistic discipline makes you infinitely harder to fool. Because when you mistake randomness for fate, your body literally becomes a courtroom. Your pulse prosecutes you, your stomach testifies against you, and your sleep takes the sentence. We have to confront luck, not as an excuse, as a missing variable. And this builds to our first key concept, the random walk. Basically, it's a path shaped by many small, unpredictable steps. The term actually comes from a mathematical concept describing a drunkard staggering in an open field. He takes steps in entirely random directions, yet over time, the distance he covers away from his starting point follows strict mathematical laws. You've got to apply this concept when a sequence looks purposeful but might just be noise. Say a single interview goes badly and your gut immediately says you aren't enough. Stop right there. Isolated events will absolutely mislead you, while distributions will educate you. I want you to imagine an old astronomy desk at night. The brass telescope has gone cold, paper charts are just covering the wood, and each plate shows a star point that's slightly misplaced. One mark sits high, another drifts to the left. One mark looks exactly like an error. And alone, each of those dots feels like an accusation. But together, over time, they reveal a perfect orbit. The astronomer doesn't love the blur on the plate. He needs the blur. The noise only gives shape when many sightings gather together. And that, really, is the deepest, most private lesson of the Drunkard's Walk. Mlodinow points out that if you have thousands of mutual fund managers just tossing coins to pick stocks, pure mathematical probability guarantees that a few of them will flip heads 5 years in a row. The financial press will slap them on magazine covers and call them absolute visionaries. But they aren't visionaries. They are just the inevitable output of a massive distribution. You see, a single point can humiliate you or it can falsely elevate you. But a field of points can teach you. So the crucial point is how we actually apply this. Let's talk about base rate, the background frequency of an event. Inside the Upwise practice, you really have to use reference classes before creating a whole biography or character story based on just a single win or loss. If the base rate of success for, say, a new restaurant is incredibly low and yours fails, you do not need to write some tragic narrative about your lack of vision. Delay the personal story entirely until the base rate has spoken, because judgment without statistics is just theater.
And that naturally leads us to sample size. Simply put, this is the number of observations behind a claim. You need to apply this before changing your identity, your commitments, or your strategic direction. You can finally stop kneeling to the last result when you demand a wider sample.
Uncertainty isn't a mood, guys. It is a practice. To break out of the cage of a single bad month, you need a sample. That single word can literally save you years of misdirected effort. It dictates how you view your next risk, your next hire, and your next apology.
The old self seeks a verdict. The trained self seeks a range. So I want you to create a small decision ledger. Just write down the choice, write the odds, write the reason, and write a review date. This simple tool protects your warmth from stupidity. It moves you away from shame and right into calibrated feedback. Remember, do not grade the choice by one result. Grade it by what it knew at the exact time it was made. This brings us to a highly practical edge. Before any major choice, actively name the random forces at play. Market mood, timing, luck, attention. Then name your controllable forces: preparation, fit, margin, patience. Look, naming the random forces lowers your arrogance when you inevitably succeed, and naming the controllable forces kills your helplessness when you inevitably stumble.
Now, consider this. Leonard Mlodinow doesn't remove your agency in the Drunkard's Walk. He relocates it. You can't command the whole field. You simply cannot force the dice to show a 6. But you can command your sampling, your sizing, and your review cadence. You're basically replacing fake omniscience with clean, solid calibration. So the image returns. That astronomy desk, the blurred plates, the orbit hidden inside the error. That is you after enough honest sightings. The deepest insight of this entire explainer is not that luck rules life. Honestly, that's too easy. The deepest insight is that if you have no method, chance becomes your identity. But if you have a method, chance becomes information. So I will leave you with this final, vital question. What verdict have I mistaken for evidence?